And welcome to our final spring training edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Mike Rains, along with Rob Rains, here from our home headquarters here for spring training, the Homewood Suites at the Palm Beach Gardens. Mike, it seems like when we always come down here in the middle of February, get ready to start spring training, it seems like it's going to be a long time. I don't know where this spring went. It went by awfully fast.
Very fast, but it's an exciting time. We're getting ready for opening day here. The Cardinals are getting ready to battle in what can be a tough NL Central.
I think there's going to be a very competitive division. I really do. 4 games left in spring training before the Cardinals will break camp after the game on Sunday, actually leaving on Monday morning. We'll fly up to Memphis and then play the AAA team in an exhibition game, then get back on the plane and fly up to St. Louis, have a day off on Tuesday, work out on Wednesday, get the season started on Thursday. But we've got a lot to talk about here as we get close to the Cardinals with the day off on Thursday. Did pick up a win 7-1 over the Washington Nationals on Wednesday. Steven Matz looked good again. We're going to get to some of the pitching discussions here in a second. But, Mike, I thought we'd start off the show by looking back at the beginning of spring training. We did a story on the stlsportspage.com about the 10 biggest questions facing the Cardinals. Thought we'd look back and see how those have all played out over the last 6 weeks or so.
Well, as we've talked about from day one of the season ending last year, the number one biggest question was, what's Nolan Arenado going to do? And that's the first thing, that you addressed in your questions is where is he going to go? Where's he going to be? And we know that he's here. We know that he's staying. And I think for all intents and purposes, let's hope that he's coming out ready to play. He's looked good this spring. And I think, we can say what we want about him, but he's got the capability of making this ball club very good.
He made one great defensive play on Wednesday, a barehanded pickup and got the runner out at first. Of course, might have helped that the runner was Andrew Kisner, the former Cardinal catcher now playing for Washington. But I think, he has had a disappointing spring offensively. He had an RBI single on Wednesday, hitting 184 for the spring. But I know veterans we talk about with veteran pitchers, you talk about with veteran hitters, they – usually you can throw the spring training stats out the window. They've got things they're working on. They're trying to, as long as they're comfortable with their swing. He's gotten a lot of at-bats the last few days on the backfields of the game. So he was actually question 1 and 2 out of the top 10 when we talked about, number one, what will his effect be on the whole reset plan? And I think we know the answer to that as well, is you're going to get somebody squeezed out who's not going to get the playing time or the at-bats that they would have gotten had Arenado not been here. Second question, could they still trade him? The answer was yes, but of course that hasn't happened in the spring, and I think we're all pretty much convinced now that he's going to start the season in St. Louis. Probably won't have to think about the trading situation again until we get closer to that deadline in July, and then that'll depend on how he's playing, how the team's playing, if there's an interest in one of the other clubs that he's said he might consider going to. So that's definitely going to be a hold. There were a couple of rumors during the spring about maybe he would agree to go to this team or that team, or maybe they rekindled talks with somebody. I don't know that anything was ever close to happening. So he's here. He's going to play third base, back cleanup most of the days. And I think, like you said, I think the Cardinals are optimistic that he's going to play well.
There's the 2 takeaways that I have from the Arenado situation is, one is when you compare what he did last year and you're looking at that, offensively, it was not a good year, but defensively, it was also a really bad year for him. So if he can get back to defensively the Gold Glove, Platinum Glove winner, caliber third baseman that he was, that's also going to be a big addition to this team, because he made some plays last year that, some errors that you don't see him normally make. And so that's takeaway number 1, is that he needs to defensively be a lot better, and he can be. And takeaway number 2 is offensively, right? If he gets back to the 280, 290 hitter that he is, I think that's going to be a big boost to this offense. And if he's doing that, and the team's playing well, I don't see them trading him at all this year.
Probably not. You're probably right about that. The next question we addressed was, can they find innings for young pitchers? And I think we saw the answer to that. They did, but I don't think it necessarily means they're going to have innings for young pitchers when the regular season begins. With Michael McGreevy, has had a great spring, but at the moment we still don't see how he's going to fit into the starting rotation.
The only question I have for Mo is, does performance matter? He's said that time and time before, and if it does, I don't see how Michael McGreevy is not a starting pitcher come, when the season starts, come opening day. Now, I don't understand. To me, I don't see the problem with the 6-man rotation with this staff. You've got a couple veterans that could use the extra rest, and you've got some young guys that could use the rest at the same time. So I don't see that being a problem, but I also don't see that team going this route.
Yeah, you also have 3 off days early in the regular season, which would kind of mess with the 6-man thing. You might go a week without pitching, and most of these guys, pitchers, are kind of a creature of habit. They like to have that ball every 5 days and know they're going to get it. And again, kind of when you look at spring training performances, Sonny Gray has had a horrible spring. Miles has been okay. Palante's been Matz has been very good, and Fetty was better in his last start. So I think that's the 5 guys they're going to roll with, and we'll just see how it shakes out. I think you could almost make an argument that based on what we saw this spring with Quinn Matthews, with Tekola Roby, Tink didn't pitch that well this spring, but we know what he's capable of doing. Graceffo went option down to Memphis. If they option McGreevy as well, you could potentially have a 5-man rotation in Memphis of Quinn Matthews, Tekola Roby, Tink Hence, the McGreevy. I think those guys could hold their own against the Cardinals starting rotation.
Absolutely. And obviously, take JoJo and Helsley out of this discussion, but because they've done very well and they're going to be in the bullpen. But your best pitchers so far this spring, if you're looking at numbers, have been McGreevy, Matz, Quinn Matthews. It's the guys that I think Matz is the one guy that jumps out there that you didn't think would probably be there. But he's the one that I would say I have the most confidence in if they leave him as a starter every day. But my question comes down to Miles Michaelis at $17 million a year. How long do you ride that ship, or do you say it's time for McGreevy to pitch instead of him?
And what if he's got the no trade clause? Hadn't been interested in going anyplace. So it just comes down to the question: if he's not pitching well and the season starts, are you willing to eat that contract? And how far do they have to get into the season before it makes sense to do that? So moving on, sorry, we kept on our list. The next one was Wilson Contreras and playing first base, and I think that's been a very positive for the Cardinals. He's played very well and looked very comfortable out there.
He's looked very well defensively. Yes, he's made the comment a few times that he's had a few positions here or a few balls here and there that he's like not really sure where to go, if it's directly to him or directly to the pitcher and who's covering first. But I think that will come with time. But I think so far he's looked great.
Next question concerned the impact of Brant Brown as a new hitting coach. And I think that's probably still an open question. I mean, the Cardinals have not hit very well overall. When you look at the final spring numbers, they've been right down near the bottom of the league in average, in runs scored. But I think you see some of these guys now starting to get a little bit hotter. So again, I don't think you can read too much. You can read too much and overreact into spring training stats. So I'm willing to kind of see and wait and see how these guys perform when they get into the regular season to kind of pass judgment on Brant Brown as a hitting coach.
And I definitely think that we need to figure it out through a month of the season to see where it is and see how things project. But to me, the numbers that jump out from spring training, if you are going to look at the numbers, are the strike percentage. And the number of times guys are striking out is unusually high this year. I was looking at it earlier. So, okay, of the guys that have played most of spring, so let's say a minimum of 35 plate appearances, right. Who has the lowest strikeout percentage on the team?
Without looking, I would say Newbar.
Jose Fermin with 4.4%.
Okay.
45 plate appearances, 4.4% of the time he strikes out.
Good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're looking at guys like, Mason Wynn at 27%, and you're looking at guys like where did I just see it? I had it on here, now I lost it. Gorman at 25%. So it'll be interesting to see if Brant Brown can fix those things as we go throughout the season.
Yeah, Mason Wynn has not had a good spring. Gorman has gotten some hits here lately. He had another hit, a double on Wednesday. It's going to be interesting. So we'll see how all those guys work out. Next question, and I know this is going to be the one that we have to probably take most of the time talking about, because the same topic we've been talking about all season is who's going to get the bulk of the playing time in center field. When we get through these questions, we're going to talk about a couple things, then we're going to roll into our projected lineups for what we guess is going to be the lineup for opening day, and what differences is what we think it will be and what you and I both think it should be, which are going to be interesting. But center field,
I think the biggest question to center field comes down to who should it be or who will the Cardinals put there? Because there's a difference, right? And based on everything that has been shown, Victor Scott should be starting in center field opening day. He will not be, but he should be. He's done everything that he can to prove this year that he's there, but for some reason they just haven't bought into him yet, and they still like the advantage of him playing every day to get better defensively down in Memphis, and I don't agree with that.
He had his third home run on Wednesday, and Oli Marmol after the game said he had an unbelievable camp. So I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to go down to the wire. Hirsiani's not been able to play the last few days because of an illness, but I think it's, we'll get to it when we get to our projected starting lineups and we'll be able to talk about it then a little bit more. Uh, Gorman and Walker, their spring, not been a good spring for either one of those guys. And I mean, again, you're not going to base the future of two former number one draft picks on how they perform during spring training, but at some point this season they're going to have to play better.
And I think the thing is too, you got to let them get their at bats, right? You can't do what you did last year and have Walker come up and just platoon against lefties when he doesn't hit them well, or vice versa for righties. For Gorman, you got to let him play against righties, lefties every day, at least for the first month of the season. You got to give him at least a month and a half to figure it out and kind of get there. Because, I mean, yes, those games are important, but they're not as important as you get down the stretch. And so you got to just let them play to see if they can get through it or not.
And that's what they've said all along is going to be their plan for this year, is to let those guys play, try to get them 500 at bats and kind of see where they are at the end of the season. So we'll see if that actually happens over the course of the season. Can Nootbaar stay healthy was the next question. So far, the answer to that question has been yes. He's been hitting in the leadoff spot the last couple of days. He's got his spring average up to 306. I think going into the games on Wednesday was tied for the major league lead in walks this spring. So he's had a good camp.
And it will be interesting to see. And he's a guy who we can talk about as we get through the season or as we get closer to say, what do you think? We can look back on this. This would be my question for the regular season as we look back. Where does Lars Nootbaar log the most games played by position in the outfield? Left, right, or center? I'd be curious to see at the end of the season where that lines up to be.
Or how close it is to each of the three of them. Yeah.
Yes.
Really good. Thomas Ajayci, unfortunately, he's probably one guy that did get penalized a little bit because of Nolan Arenado being here. And I think I understand this. I mean, he's 22 years old. There's no point in him being on the bench in St. Louis, even though he deserves, showing that he could play at the major league level, getting one start and maybe 5 or 6 at bats a week when he can play every day in Memphis, be ready if there's an injury or they need to make a move down there or something. So I understand that move for his future. And again, that's kind of one of those short-term, long-term decisions that we talked about before about how the Cardinals have to balance that all out this spring. The bullpen situation we said, is there a room for a surprise somewhere? I think a couple of things stand out to me, and they're both in the bullpen. I didn't see Chris Roycroft and Kyle Leahy not giving up a run all spring, and I think they both earned a spot in the bullpen, and that is
very good. And I think there's a lot of highlights throughout the bullpen that you could say of guys that have made or will make the club here. I think there's a lot of bullpen guys that have looked really good. Libby's looked great. JoJo's looked great. Helsley looks like he should. I think there's a lot to be positive about the bullpen.
And I think there's going to be an ebb and flow. And when we talked about the I-55 shuttle before, all these guys in the bullpen other than Helsley, have options. So I think you're going to see guys, floating back and forth. Maton won't. He's going to be, the main take on the 8th inning Andrew Kittredge role. But the other guys, I think they're going to be in flux the whole year. I mean, I think you're going to go through a lot of different guys in those middle relief spots.
If you were going to say, is there a surprise player, I would say Phil Maton. Take the obvious answer, right? Because we didn't see them signing a player of that caliber. He's been a closer for them, so it gives them an option down the road. If they do decide they want to trade Helsley, if he's playing well and the team's not playing well, you have an option. But I think right now between Libby, JoJo, and Maton, Helsley, you've got that 7th, 8th, and 9th locked up, and for whatever reason, Ollie loves to pull starting pitchers in the 6th inning and not give them a chance. So it'll be interesting to see if he does or doesn't this year with these guys or not. Well, I should say with the exception of Andre Palante, he seems to be the only guy that he lets go longer. But everyone else he pulls in the 6th inning. So you've got some help there in the back end of the bullpen to do that.
Visitor with Mike Raines here on the Raines on the Cardinals podcast, our final spring training edition. All of our spring training coverage on the STL Sports Page, sponsored by AAA Travel of Missouri. We thank them for their support, as well as all of course, our regular sponsors throughout the entire year, led by Drury Hotels. So encourage you to check out any of those fine places anytime you're traveling anywhere around the United States of America as you get ready to kind of make your plans to go catch the Cardinal game on the road somewhere this season. There's probably a Drury Hotel where you're going, or if you're headed down to catch some of the minor league action in Peoria or Springfield or Memphis, you can check out all the Drury hotels around and all those near those cities as well. All right, comes down to roster time. The Cardinals camp roster as of Wednesday night when we're taping this show, stands at 30 players. They have 4 more players to cut before we get to opening day. I think we kind of know who a couple of them are going to be. I think Jose Fermin, the way he has played and the versatility he's shown, starting 3 different games at 3 different positions the last 3 days, I think he's going to be your final spot on the bench. I think, obviously we know the setback. The two catchers are Herrera and Pages. You know that Burleson is going to be on the team. I think Lucan Baker has solidified a spot off the bench as a right-handed hitter. That leaves one spot open, and it happens to be on the pitching staff.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they decide to do because they've got a few options they can go. I think what's tough is when you look at a guy like McGreevy, I don't think he should go to the bullpen. As much as it pains me to say,
Ollie has said that he doesn't see him as a reliever.
And I agree, but I'm just saying, like, as much as I want him here, if he's not a starter, he needs to be in Memphis. And somebody else can fill that bullpen spot.
Yeah, of course, it's going to be interesting because you have a lot of guys that, technically three players on that rotation as of now who are free agents at the end of the year. So I don't think that necessarily the five starters that the Cardinals are going to start this season with, that we expect to start this season with, are going to be the five who end the season in St. Louis. And I think McGreevy's going to fall in that category.
And we know at some point someone's going to get hurt, right? Injuries happen. They do all the time.
Always happens.
And that's, I think that's one of the worrisome things about Steven Matz, right? He's had trouble staying healthy. And so if you got to have somebody ready to go, and maybe that's McGreevy, maybe that's Tink, maybe that's Quinn Matthews, whoever it may be, to come up and fill those spot roles too.
Okay, so now it's time to predict. We're going to predict what the Cardinals' starting lineup is going to be next Thursday as they get together with the Minnesota Twins, 3:15 at Busch Stadium. And we're going to do two things. You and I have not talked about this in advance other than to say that we're going to pick our own projected, what we think the lineup is going to be. And then we're going to come back and discuss what we think it should be and how it's different than what we think it will be. So I think we have a graphic ready to go. Our crack producer, Sally, has got this ready. Okay, let's see what we've got. This is the starting lineups that we predict will happen on next Thursday. So, yeah, there are little differences there.
There are little differences. It's hard to say because, I went with my gut of what it should be. Probably not what it will be. So I think this is hopefully.
Is this more what you think it will be or what you want it to be?
This lineup here is what I want them to do with. Yes, this is what I want the Cardinals to do. So this is the lineup of what I want the Cardinals to do, and this is where it should be based on speed, based on how guys have played. So I think Wynn has struggled, but having the speed at the top of the lineup just really changes this game a lot, big time.
Right. So I would be surprised if they don't start Nootbaar in center field because I don't think Victor Scott's going to be here. I would like to have him here. Would be my suggestion that I would say, yes, he should definitely be the starting center fielder on opening day. I frankly will be surprised if it happens. So.
Yeah, I would agree. And so if I was going with the lineup that I think it will be on opening day, it would be Wynn, Newt, Contreras, Arenado, Donovan, Herrera, Burleson, Walker, Gorman.
Okay. So I'm going to shot. Go ahead.
The only real flip-flop that we have there is, slightly different. Just I still put Wynn batting leadoff, even though he hasn't played very well.
Yeah, if I was making out the lineup for opening day, I would have Scott playing center field leading off. I would have Wynn batting ninth. But here's the shocker. I would not start Jordan Walker. I would start Nootbaar in right, Donovan in left, Gorman at second, and have Burleson be the DH.
Now, I guess depending on – I haven't looked at the pitching matchup, so I don't know if we're facing a lefty or a righty. That could –
I think it's probably Pablo Lopez, but I'm not positive about
that. And that could change some things too, but I didn't look at that.
Yeah, I just don't think Walker's played well this spring. I mean, I know that he's going to be one of the guys they want to get to 500 at-bats to. They have, a lot of high hopes for him. I just think right now your better outfield arrangement would be Scott, Nootbaar, and Donovan. So
yeah, and I'm glad
it won't happen. I mean, I'm convinced it won't happen, but I'm just
for sure. And Burleson will be out there some too. I'm glad to see Burleson struggled to start spring, but is coming around better. Hit a long home run today that was nice. So as he starts to come around, I think that's going to help too. So, and again, I think what the lineup is on opening day will not be the lineup 2 months into the season either. So I think as we progress, things will change.
And I still think it, despite how he's hit this spring, I still think Mason Wynn is a good leadoff hitter, and I think there's probably going to be a lot of times. I asked Ollie on Wednesday after the ballgame because Nootbaar has hit leadoff the last couple of days. Now Wynn wasn't playing. I said, "Do you have somebody that would you like to have a set leadoff hitter, or is that a position that could fluctuate?" Because they do have several guys who've done it. Nootbaar's done it. Wynn's done it. Scott's done it. Obviously Donovan has done it. And he said we're still talking about that. So. we'll have to just kind of see. And again, doesn't mean that what they do on opening day doesn't mean that that's how it's going to check out for the course of the entire season.
And as we've said before on this show many times, that spring training stats are hard to compare to the regular season, right? So when the season starts going, things may drastically change.
Sure.
Mason Wynn may just all of a sudden get home and click in the month of April. He's on fire, right? So like we've seen it happen plenty of times, right? I mean, you've seen teams that have losing records in the spring and come out on fire, and you've seen it the other way around.
We've seen it with the Cardinals. We've seen it with the Cardinals before, yeah.
Multiple times, yes.
And Sonny Gray's a guy. We talked about this the other day after his crazy game where he was pulled, 3 times and was allowed to re-enter the game because of the spring training rule. And, he said the other day, he said, "I've had horrible springs and come out and pitched well. I've had great spring trainings and pitched horrible during the season. So I've done it all." So, he said, "Let's wait till, spring training. It doesn't matter. We'll get to opening day, turn the lights on, and let's see where we're at." So he's a guy I'm really curious about, how he performs, because he didn't pitch well the second half of last season, and he's obviously the big guy that they're counting on to be their number one starter. He didn't want to, he could have gotten traded if he had agreed to go over the winter when the Cardinals were trying to talk to everybody about that. So, he said, "I wanted to stay. I want to be a part of it." So they're counting on him to come through and be the ace that they need at the top of that rotation.
The hope now is that everybody gets home, gets back to St. Louis, gets in their routine, and things settle down for them, right? They go back to getting to the ballpark at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon and not getting to the ballpark at 7 a.m. So as that changes for some guys, it works out better. So I think that's the hope, is that you got to give them a couple weeks, a month to settle in, and hope that you're just not too far behind in that month, right?
Yeah, we hope everybody has enjoyed our spring training podcast that we brought to you every week, as well as all of our other spring training coverage. Feature up earlier this week on Matt Koperniak, who, again, another guy that I think played well enough to earn a spot on this ball club, but there really wasn't a spot for him to fill. So he's a guy I think you will hear from at some point during this season. All he does is hit at 309 with 20 home runs in Memphis last year. I think you'll enjoy that story if you haven't had a chance to read it. And, of course, I appreciate everybody who clicked on all of the daily postcards, kind of our way of getting all of the nuts and bolts to you of what happened on each day of spring training, and our little video Jupiter Minute, which we have done the last few years, which I think have been pretty successful, giving you a really quick overview of what happened in that game if you weren't able to pay attention to the broadcast or follow it along on social media.
Yeah, everything's been great. And so, thank everybody for following along, and we encourage people to check out the podcast throughout the season. You can find it anywhere on the website, obviously, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those places, anywhere where you get your podcasts, or
anywhere, anytime. Yeah. So we will continue that during the season, as well as all of our other course game reports, feature stories. There's a lot of concentration this year on the minor leagues. So we're looking forward to a great regular season, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We get it all started next week. Still time, if you're watching this podcast on Thursday morning, listen to it, to sign up for our NCAA bracket challenge. First place, 2 nights in any jury hotel around the country, and obviously some other prizes as well for second and third place. We've got pretty good number of entries already, but still time to sign up. As I say, if you're watching this either on Thursday morning, because we don't count the play-in game. So just before that first game starts on Thursday, which I think is around 11 o'clock in the morning St. Louis time, you can get in on the website. All the details on the website. If you don't already have a CBS Sports login, you will need that, but it's very easy to fill out your bracket. And it's as we've seen from the past, you don't have to have great knowledge of college basketball to be successful in this thing, because you and I, brackets generally are in the trash can after the first couple of days.
Usually they are, yes. So anytime you can flip a coin to decide the winner sometimes, and it works out. But a big thank you to Drury Hotels and the MB Insurance Agency for helping us with the prizes there.
And I did not pick my Kansas Jayhawks to win, which means they probably will do better than I expect them to do this year.
You have them winning a game?
I have them winning 2 games. Or one.
Yeah.
One.
Anytime I can root for Kansas when they're playing against John Calipari, so I can always root for that.
Yeah. Potential Kansas-Missouri matchup coming up there in the Sweet 16, but I don't know that they're going to get there. Good luck to the Missouri Tigers. Luck to Illinois. Really a lot of luck to SIU Edwardsville. They've got a tough draw as a 16 seed. You end up playing number 1 Houston, but tournament's always a lot of fun. You and I enjoyed watching it. We've done it together for a number of years, and I'm sure we'll do that again as well. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Never say never on a 16 beating a 1, because it had never happened.
It has happened.
Time, and it's happened twice here recently. So
yeah, it does happen. So we'll see. So anyway, Mike, enjoyed the visit, enjoyed all of our spring training coverage, and we'll be doing this again every week during the regular season. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It's Reigns on the Cardinals podcast, brought to you by AAA Travel in Missouri and all of our other great spring training sponsors here on stlsportspage.com. Have a great day, everybody.